I, 25F, am currently pursuing my PhD in biomedical research at a prestigious university in Boston, focusing on potential treatments for rare genetic disorders. My life was relatively normal until my sister Emily, 29F, turned it into complete chaos with her obsession for a perfect destination wedding. Growing up, Emily was always our parents' Tom, 56M, and Sarah, 55F, clear favorite, but this wedding situation brought their favoritism to a whole new level. The dynamics in our family have always been predictable. Emily gets what she wants, and I adapt. She's been the golden child since childhood, while I focused on my academics and research. This pattern started early. When Emily wanted expensive dance lessons, my parents didn't hesitate to pay, but when I needed a new laptop for school, I had to work part-time at a local coffee shop. I accepted this reality and channeled my energy into building my own future through education. My grandfather understood this dynamic. Before he passed away 3 years ago, he left both Emily and me substantial inheritances specifically earmarked for our futures. While I carefully preserved mine for my doctoral research, Emily spent hers within a year on luxury vacations, designer clothes, and what she called living her best life. Our parents never said a word about her spending habits. When Emily announced her engagement to James, 29M, after only knowing him for 2 months, I wasn't surprised that our parents immediately supported her decision. What I didn't expect was how this wedding would completely upend my life. The engagement party alone cost more than my semester's expenses, but that was just the beginning. Emily's dream was to have an extravagant destination wedding at a luxury resort in the Maldives. The cost was astronomical, far more than anyone in our family could reasonably afford. She wanted everything: private villa accommodations for all guests, personalized welcome packages, underwater photography sessions, and even a professional videographer to document the entire week-long celebration. At first, I assumed I would attend the wedding just like any other sister would. However, I quickly realized that my role wasn't that of a sister but rather a walking bank account. The situation reached a breaking point during a family dinner at our parents' house. Emily was showing us her wedding Pinterest board, filled with impossibly expensive ideas, when our parents exchanged that look, the one I'd seen countless times before when they were about to sacrifice my needs for Emily's wants. When the costs started spiraling out of control, my parents sat me down for what they called a family discussion. They informed me that they needed to use my research fund to help finance Emily's big day. This wasn't just any money, it was the inheritance my grandfather had specifically left for my education and future research. The same grandfather who had always encouraged my academic pursuits and believed in my potential to make a difference in the field of genetic research. The guilt tripping was relentless. Emily would do the same for you, my mother insisted, though we both knew that was completely false. This is about supporting family, my father added, conveniently forgetting how my research dreams were also about family, specifically, fulfilling my grandfather's wishes for my future. Every time I tried to object, they had a new angle of emotional manipulation ready. Think about how this will affect Emily's happiness, my mother would say, while my father added, your research can wait, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. They even brought up past instances where the family had supported me, like paying for my undergraduate textbooks, conveniently forgetting that I had worked 2 part-time jobs throughout college to minimize their financial burden. My academic advisor noticed something was wrong during our weekly meeting. She could tell I was distracted and stressed, but I couldn't bring myself to explain that my family was pressuring me to sacrifice my research funding for my sister's underwater wedding photoshoot. The irony of potentially delaying my research on genetic diseases to fund an extravagant party wasn't lost on me. After days of constant pressure and emotional manipulation, I reluctantly transferred $10,000 from my research fund. It was money that was meant for my lab supplies, conference travels, and potential emergency research expenses. The moment I hit the transfer button, I felt a piece of my grandfather's faith in me crumble. The days leading up to the wedding were tense. I wasn't happy about giving up my savings, but I tried to make peace with it, thinking at least I would be part of my sister's special day. I even started looking into affordable backup options for my research funding, including additional teaching assistant positions and potential small grants. Emily seemed to be getting more stressed as the wedding approached. She was constantly sending updates in our family group chat about every minor detail, from the exact shade of roses she wanted to the specific temperature at which the champagne should be served. Our parents encouraged her perfectionism, praising every decision and assuring her that everything would be exactly as she envisioned. My lab work started to suffer. Between the constant family drama and the stress of figuring out how to replace my lost research funds, I was struggling to focus on my experiments. My fellow PhD students noticed, but I kept making excuses about being tired or having minor equipment issues. I didn't want to admit that my sister's wedding was derailing my academic career. Then came the moment that changed everything. 4 days before everyone was set to leave for the Maldives, Emily asked me to meet her for coffee at the campus cafe. I thought maybe she wanted to thank me for my contribution or discuss some last-minute wedding details. Instead, she dropped a bombshell that I never saw coming. "I don't think you should come to the wedding," she said casually, as if she was discussing the weather. "Having you there would be a bad look for the family." When I asked her what she meant, she started listing reasons: my academic style wouldn't fit with her luxury wedding aesthetic, my single status might make her married friends uncomfortable, and somehow my presence would throw off the symmetry of her wedding photos. I sat there in shock, my untouched coffee growing cold, as my sister effectively uninvited me from the wedding I had helped finance. The worst part wasn't even her decision, it was the way she delivered it with such casual cruelty, as if she was doing me a favor by freeing up my schedule for research. When I called our parents later that day, their response was equally devastating. Instead of defending me or questioning Emily's decision, they simply said it was her special day, and she should have it exactly as she wants it. My mother even suggested I should be grateful for the extra time to work on my research, completely ignoring the fact that they had just taken my research money for a wedding I was now banned from attending. I watched in disbelief as my family packed their bags and left for the airport without me. They didn't seem bothered at all by the fact that they had excluded me after taking my money. As I sat alone in my small apartment that evening, surrounded by research papers and lab notes, something inside me finally snapped. Perhaps it was remembering my grandfather's proud smile when I got accepted into the PhD program, or maybe it was the realization that I had let my family walk all over me one too many times. Whatever the trigger, I knew I had to take action. That night, I called my bank and requested a chargeback on the $10,000 I had transferred. The decision to request a chargeback wasn't easy, but sitting alone in my apartment while my family celebrated in the Maldives gave me clarity about years of manipulation. I didn't care about the fallout anymore, I was done letting them walk all over me. Within a few days, the money was returned to my account. It felt like taking back not just my research fund, but also my self-respect. I expected an immediate explosion of angry calls and messages once they discovered the chargeback, but the first few days were surprisingly quiet. I focused on catching up with my lab work, grateful for the chance to fully immerse myself in my research without family drama. However, things took an unexpected turn when an unfamiliar face showed up at my door. It was James's ex-girlfriend, Claire. I had never met her before, but she introduced herself and acted like she belonged there. She explained that she needed a place to stay, speaking as if we had some prior arrangement. I was completely confused and exhausted from dealing with all the recent drama, but something about her desperate expression made me hesitate to turn her away. Through our conversations over the next few days, I learned that she and James had maintained contact even after he started dating Emily. Apparently, he had invited Claire to the wedding at the last minute, causing a huge scene during the ceremony. When things didn't go as planned at the wedding, she decided to show up at our family home instead. The real chaos erupted when my family returned from the Maldives. They were already stressed and exhausted. Emily was in a particularly foul mood because her perfect wedding hadn't gone as planned. There had been tension with James's family, and several things hadn't met her exacting standards. But nothing could have prepared them for walking into our living room and finding James's ex-girlfriend casually drinking tea on the couch. Emily completely lost it. She started screaming, demanding to know why Claire was in our home. Our parents were shocked too, but their primary concern, as always, was calming Emily down. Claire, for her part, remained eerily calm, acting as if she had every right to be there. That's when we learned that James had secretly invited her to the wedding, causing a massive argument during the reception. Then came the money issue. In the midst of this chaos, Emily checked her accounts and discovered the missing $10,000. Her rage reached new heights. She turned on me, screaming about betrayal and family loyalty. Our parents, predictably, sided with her, demanding that I return the money immediately. But for once, I stood my ground. I calmly explained my position. Since I wasn't welcome at the wedding, I didn't feel obligated to pay for it. Emily's reaction was explosive. She revealed that the whole wedding had cost $40,000, and now she had no idea how to pay for it. She blamed everyone, James, his family, me, even the resort staff, for how things had turned out. Meanwhile, James seemed to be walking on eggshells, trying unsuccessfully to smooth things over. The situation was like watching a luxury cruise ship sink while the captain insisted everything was fine. Emily continued to have meltdowns about the wedding, James's ex-girlfriend, and their mounting debt, but for the first time in my life, I felt strangely detached from her drama. For once, I wasn't caught up in Emily's chaos. I had my research fund back and was focusing on my future again. The past few months had taught me valuable lessons about standing up for myself and not sacrificing my dreams for someone else's fantasies. Emily's perfect world was crumbling around her, and for once, it wasn't my responsibility to help pick up the pieces. The aftermath has been tense. My family keeps saying I'm being selfish and petty for taking the money back. They argue that I should have supported Emily regardless of being uninvited. But I've drawn a line that I won't cross anymore. My research, my future, and my self-respect are not bargaining chips for Emily's whims. My grandfather believed in my potential to make a difference through my research. By standing up for myself and reclaiming my research fund, I feel like I'm finally honoring his faith in me. Emily's wedding might have been a disaster, but it gave me something invaluable, the strength to stop being the family doormat. Update 1, it's been around 4 months since my original post, and I think it's time for an update because quite a few things have happened. After the wedding drama settled down and my parents finally stopped trying to guilt-trip me about the money, I noticed that Emily's situation was getting worse. It started with her constant complaints about James not doing enough to support her lifestyle. While he worked a regular 9 to 5 job in finance, it was clear that the wedding expenses and their related debt were putting a massive strain on their finances. Instead of addressing their problems directly, Emily began lashing out, insisting that James should be her emotional support while he dealt with his own stress about their financial situation. Their financial situation spiraled out of control as Emily struggled to handle the wedding expenses after my chargeback. Her credit cards were maxed out, and she started getting calls from collection agencies. Rather than facing reality, she made increasingly questionable financial decisions in an attempt to maintain her image. One night, she decided to throw a celebration dinner to prove to everyone that she was doing fine and had everything under control. She invited all her friends, sparing no expense on food and drinks, trying to maintain the illusion of her lavish lifestyle. The dinner became a disaster when the bill from the catering service arrived, and she couldn't afford to pay it. She had to call our parents for help, which only added fuel to the fire. For the first time in his life, our father was furious with Emily, questioning how she could be so irresponsible. Things got worse when her friendships began to fall apart. Sarah, one of her closest friends, finally confronted her about her behavior and spending habits. Instead of taking the criticism constructively, Emily exploded, accusing Sarah of being unsupportive and jealous. Their fight escalated into a heated social media battle, with Emily publicly criticizing Sarah for abandoning her during difficult times. The drama only isolated Emily further. Emily then decided that becoming an influencer would solve all her problems. She began using her recent wedding as a platform to launch her online persona, posting about her life journey and wellness routines, which primarily consisted of purchasing expensive products she couldn't afford. Her followers quickly saw through the act, and the comments shifted from supportive to critical, highlighting her hypocrisy and extravagant spending while drowning in debt. She even joined a local wedding planning and budgeting community group, but that quickly became another source of drama. During one meeting, she hijacked the discussion to brag about her perfect wedding, completely ignoring the group's focus on practical budget advice. When other members expressed their frustration, Emily stormed out, claiming they were just jealous. The group eventually blacklisted her. Meanwhile, I've started my fall semester and managed to secure some scholarships and loans to keep my research on track. I've been trying to stay out of the drama, but updates about Emily's situation keep coming through our parents. My mother even suggested that now that I'm back on track with school, I could help Emily financially again. I quickly shut down that idea. As it stands now, Emily is facing the reality of her mounting debts, her community group has turned against her, and her friends are distancing themselves. James has started staying with friends more frequently, clearly unable to handle the constant drama and financial strain. It's becoming increasingly clear that Emily needs to hit rock bottom before she can start to change, though I'm beginning to think she has a different definition of a rock bottom than most people. I'll keep you updated if anything significant changes, but for now, I'm focusing on my research and trying to maintain healthy boundaries with my family. Update 2. Hello everyone, it's been around 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share what's been happening with Emily and the ongoing situation in our lives. As you may remember, after the disastrous wedding and her attempts to get her life back on track, Emily has now lost James for good. James moved out a few months ago, and honestly, it feels like we're still in the middle of a TV drama. At first, Emily was in complete denial about their breakup. She continued to pretend everything was perfectly fine and honeymoon-like while sharing old photos from their wedding on social media. It was both embarrassing and sad to watch. Left to face the reality that her fairy tale was over, she began showering James with messages, begging him to come back. She would make desperate promises like, "I'll do anything to make this work," and "I can change, just give me another chance." Instead of focusing on her own healing, she became obsessed with the idea that she could somehow fix their relationship through sheer determination. During one of her lowest points, Emily showed up unannounced at James's apartment, sobbing and begging him not to leave her. He handled it gently while remaining firm, explaining that their relationship had become toxic and that he couldn't go back. This only made her more desperate, and she became convinced that if she simply showed him how much she loved him, he would reconsider. Things took a darker turn when James started dating someone new. When Emily found out, it was like a switch flipped. She quickly went from sad to angry, posting passive-aggressive rants on social media accusing him of moving on too quickly and implying that he must have been cheating on her during their marriage. Her social media became a constant stream of thinly veiled attacks and emotional outbursts. In what I can only describe as a complete lapse in judgment, Emily organized a party and invited their mutual friends, hoping to orchestrate a reunion with James. When he didn't show up, she had a public meltdown, repeatedly asking everyone why he hadn't come and making her guests visibly uncomfortable. Several friends later told me they were worried about her mental state. The final blow came when James made it clear he wanted to finalize their divorce. Emily's breakdown was hard to watch. Our parents have been trying to convince her to seek professional help, but she's resisting, claiming they don't understand her pain. They eventually managed to get her to see a therapist, but she only attended a few sessions before quitting, still clinging to the hope that her marriage could somehow be saved. Her denial has become more apparent over time. She keeps posting old pictures of them together, reminiscing about their happier times, as if this might somehow bring him back. Meanwhile, our parents are exhausted from trying to support her while managing their own stress about the situation. With the divorce proceedings approaching, we're all worried about how Emily will handle it. She's stuck in the past, holding on to her relationship with James even though it's clearly over. I wish she could see that the only way forward is to face her emotions and start the healing process, but she seems determined to stay in denial. It's tough for everyone, especially for James who's trying to move on while Emily keeps trying to pull him back into her drama. I can only hope she eventually accepts reality and starts rebuilding her life, but at this point, it seems like she's not ready to make that change for herself. Update 3. Hey, everyone, it's been a few months since my last update, and things with Emily have somehow gotten even worse. If you remember, Emily had been spiraling ever since James left and their marriage basically ended. Well, it didn't stop there. Emily asked me for money a while ago, claiming she had some emergency bills and was struggling. Despite my doubts, I decided to help her out. She's still my sister, after all. I gave her a substantial amount, hoping it would help her get back on her feet. I should have known better. She blew through the money almost immediately, and I don't even know what she spent it on, but it definitely wasn't bills. When I confronted her about it, she completely freaked out. She called me selfish and said I didn't understand how difficult things were for her. It turned into a huge fight, and then she cut me off, blocked me on social media, and stopped answering my messages. I was angry and upset, but mostly I realized I'd had enough of her drama. I tried to help, but she just threw it back in my face. A couple of weeks went by, and suddenly Emily showed up again. She was out of money and options. She apologized, saying she'd been in a dark place and just needed time. Then she asked if she could stay with me for a while because she had nowhere else to go. I said no. I explained that I couldn't keep helping her unless she was willing to help herself. Her constant drama and irresponsible choices had to stop, and I wasn't going to let her take advantage of me anymore. She cried and tried to make me feel guilty, but I stuck to my decision. I refused to let her drag me down with her. She went back to our parents, who were finally fed up with her drama too. They gave her an ultimatum: either get a job or get out of the house. I think they were hoping this would wake her up to reality. Surprisingly, Emily did find a job pretty quickly, nothing glamorous, just a retail position at a local store. You'd think this would make her happy, right? Well, no. She's been complaining nonstop since she started. Nothing is good enough for her: the hours, the pay, her coworkers, absolutely nothing. I understand starting a new job can be difficult, but her constant whining is exhausting. Every time I talk to her, she complains about how unfair it is and how she's too good for this type of work. It's like she doesn't realize how fortunate she is to have a job at all after everything that's happened. She often tries to drag me into her complaints. Can you believe how stupid my boss is? Or, I shouldn't have to deal with this. The worst part is that she still acts entitled. She compares her new job to her old lifestyle, acting like she's living some sort of nightmare because she's not the center of attention anymore. It's honestly exhausting to hear her talk about how she misses her luxury lifestyle, especially knowing that she brought all this on herself. Our parents are doing their best to be supportive, but I can see the toll it's taking on them. They try to remind her that this job is a stepping stone, but she just rolls her eyes and brushes it off. It's like she thinks she deserves better without putting in the effort. So now Emily has found a job, but she's making it pretty clear that she's not made for this life. She's stuck in this cycle of complaining while trying to adjust to reality. I just wish she would realize how fortunate she is to have a roof over her head and a job, even if it's not ideal. For now, I'm staying out of it as much as I can. I keep hoping she'll eventually understand that this is her chance to start over and build something real, but so far, she seems more interested in complaining about what she's lost than appreciating what she has. Maybe this is just another step in her journey to rock bottom. I'll keep you all posted if anything changes. Update 4. Hey, everyone, it's been a while since I last updated you about Emily, and things have taken some unexpected turns. Every time I talked to her since she got her job, it felt like I was entering a pity party. She would rant about how unfair her boss was, how her coworkers were lazy, and how she was too good for this kind of work. I tried to support her and remind her that everyone has to start somewhere, but it was exhausting to hear her constantly focus on the negatives. Our parents, who were doing their best to help, began to get tired of her complaints too. They reminded Emily that this job was just a starting point, but she rolled her eyes and said they didn't understand how hard her life had become. It was really frustrating to see her waste an opportunity that many people would appreciate. After a particularly rough week, I reached my breaking point. I told her she needed to stop focusing on the negatives and start appreciating what she had, that she was lucky to have a job after everything that had happened. That didn't go well. She got really upset and called me unsympathetic. So I decided to take a step back and let her figure things out on her own. I didn't hear from her for several weeks. Honestly, I was relieved. I felt as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. However, I couldn't help but worry about her. She was still living at home, and I knew our parents were starting to get overwhelmed. I hoped she would eventually realize that unless she tried to change her life, it would just stay the same. Then one day, I got a text from Emily asking if we could talk. I prepared myself for another round of complaints or excuses, but when I called her, I was shocked. She sounded different, happy and excited. Things were starting to look up for her at work. She didn't mention James even once, and instead of complaining, she could only talk about how her manager was impressed by her performance. One day she called me to say her manager had complimented her on her customer service skills. I could hear the excitement in her voice as she shared how she had helped a customer find exactly what they needed. It was a small victory, but it felt huge compared to how she had been just a short time ago. Emily started taking more responsibility at work. She began volunteering for extra shifts and became friends with her coworkers. Our parents noticed the change too, and their optimism was contagious. They encouraged her to save money for her own place, and surprisingly, Emily listened. She mentioned wanting to regain her independence, which seemed like an important step forward. Then came the day she told me she had saved enough money to move out. I was excited, and she thanked me for being patient with her, which felt good given everything we had been through. Now Emily is gradually moving into her new apartment, and she continues to work hard. It's amazing to see her take charge of her life and realize that change starts from within. Of course, she still has moments of doubt and frustration like everyone else, but she handles them differently now. She called me the other day, not to complain but to tell me about how excited she was about a new project at work. I couldn't believe how far she had come. Emily was a completely different person just a year ago, so focused on living this lavish life and spending our parents' money. But she's finally taking charge of her own life, and I would be lying if I said I'm not proud of her. She's my older sister, so I had always wanted to look up to her as a child, and maybe now I finally can. It's been a long journey, but watching her grow and change has been worth it. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they can rebuild, and I'm just glad she finally found her way back up.